Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for October 2nd, 2024. As I begin recording this video today, it's an open question as to whether we've actually plunged into the beginnings of World War III. I'm saying this because the missile barrage fired from Iran into Israel overnight opens the door for an Israeli retaliation, which threatens not only Iran, but threatens to bring the United States into the battle in an open way, and then it becomes unclear as to who else will become involved. The Iranian missile strikes led to an announcement by the United States of full support for Israel, and the U.S. warships were involved in intercepting a number of the missiles targeting Israel. There were 12 interceptors fired at missiles from U.S. warships. Now, I'll leave it to the military experts, such as Colonel McGregor and Colonel Wilkerson and others, to assess the effectiveness of the Iranian strike and the Israeli counter plans with the Iron Dome and so on. Remember, the missile defense system of Israel was provided by the United States. But the question is, how will Israel respond to this? And of course, each act of retaliation increases the danger of a spreading war that eventually will encompass the whole region in World War III. Now, the response from the United States shows that the U.S. remains completely under the control of the war hawks. And that comes through in the justification of Israeli retaliatory measures, which have not yet been announced, but Netanyahu announced there will be a discussion in an emergency cabinet meeting that started last night. Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, said that there is deep consultation going on. Well, consulting with what? Netanyahu? He's going to do what he wants to do. Basically, you're going for his approval? Forget it. He's going to do what he thinks is right for his career. The Pentagon spokesman, Major General Ryder, said, quote, "We fully support Israel's right to defend itself." And that was the same statement that came from Biden and from Kamala Harris, giving a complete green light to Israel to launch a counterstrike. Now, step back for a moment and ask yourself, why did Iran launch this missile barrage? Well, we've seen a wave of assassinations carried out by Israel. The Hamas leader, Haniyeh, who was killed in Tehran. In Beirut, Nasrallah was assassinated. There are other lesser figures that are at the top of Hamas and Hezbollah who have been killed in the last days. There are the bombings and the attacks underway in Lebanon. So, with full support, by the way, of the United States, when it was announced that Israel was under assault from Iranian missiles, the Department of Defense sent more aircraft and more personnel saying they're coming to the aid of Israel. And so we're marching toward war. Remember, it was U.S. bombs that were used to kill Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. The additional military aid being sent in includes F-16s, F-22s, and other kinds of Air Force weapons. Kamala Harris said, quote, "She has unwavering commitment to Israel's right to defend itself." Of course, this is two-faced, because on the one side she said that it's a crime, what's being done with the killing of the Palestinians, that this should be stopped. And yet she turns around and acknowledges that the U.S. is providing the weapons that are killing the Palestinians. The same hypocrisy is typified by Blinken, who has his agencies in the State Department reporting that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid, but then goes before the Congress and says that their assessment is that Israel is not blocking aid. Well, he had the reports in his hand previously that said Israel was blocking aid. This kind of hypocrisy is what leads to world wars. And from the Trump side, Jared Kushner, may or may not have been speaking for former President Trump, but he said, the best thing we could do is, quote, tell Israel to finish the job. Does that mean destroy Iran? Is that finishing the job? Well, we don't know. But forgotten in all of this is that the indiscriminate killing that we saw unfolding for nearly a year in Gaza is now spreading to Lebanon. Now, as the situation in Southwest Asia worsens, as this crisis deepens, the outgoing foreign affairs chief of the European Union, Josep Borrell, weighed in on the whole question of what's next for Ukraine. And he called for the European Union countries to allow Ukraine to use the missiles they have to strike deep into Russia. And this puts more pressure on German Chancellor Scholz, who recently reiterated again that Germany will not allow the Taurus missiles to be used by Ukraine. But note, last week Joe Biden gave another 8.5 billion, or 8 billion to Ukraine on top of all the packages of money and weapons we've already provided them. This brings us to a question of, could that money have been used for another purpose? Look at the result of Hurricane Helene that ripped through parts of the southeastern United States, and it exposed an old and decaying infrastructure and a difficulty of providing for the immediate relief as well as the longer term relief in terms of rebuilding. Who's going to pay for that? Where is it going to come from? Should we be sending more weapons to Ukraine or taking care of the needs of the American people? Now, it's reported that power has been knocked out in a number of communities. You need to restore power, but also rebuild the power grid, which is old and in many cases inefficient. Roads and rail lines have been destroyed. U.S. flood control and water management has been inadequately funded for years, and as a result is in disrepair. So instead, we send $8 billion to a losing war effort in Ukraine. And who knows how many billions are now going in the back door to Israel. But we don't have money going to rebuild our infrastructure and to toughen it up. It needs to be modernized. Now, that brings us to the whole question of what should be discussed in the presidential campaign. And there are two things we've said that are absolutely urgent. A new security architecture, so we're not caught in these permanent wars, not a participant or complicit in genocide. That's the first thing, a security architecture which takes into account the legitimate security needs of all nations. And then secondly, an economic development architecture which invests credit into the rebuilding of basic infrastructure, into research and science and technology to bring us the technologies for the future, and of course for education, because we need a skilled workforce capable of assimilating the new technologies. None of that is being discussed in the presidential campaign in the United States. Now, we have an event today, the Schiller Institute, on Germany, on the whole question of the deployment of U.S. long-range missiles to Germany, which Biden ordered and which Scholz accepted, that would begin coming in by 2026. This makes all of Germany a target for Russia. So we're going to have speakers including former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Jack Matlock, and Ted Postel, one of the leading nuclear weapons experts in the world, and also Helga Zepp-LaRouche speaking about this. The registration for the event is in the description section. It starts at 11 a.m. Eastern today, so by the time you get this, you should plan on going right away or shortly after you read it to log on so you can be a part of this discussion. But this kind of discussion is the only way we're going to extricate ourselves from otherwise certain destruction in World War III. And we took a big step in that direction towards certain destruction and tragedy with the Israeli assassination and invasion of Lebanon, followed by the Iranian response. This has to stop.